Hello and welcome to our Andor recap finale. We've given you all plenty of time now to hopefully watch the last 3 episodes. So this is your first and only warning. It is going to be full of spoilers. So spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. And if you like what you're listening to or watching, then please make sure you like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and also leave us a rating on the podcast provider of your choice. Charlie, over to you.
Well, it's the Andor finale. I haven't recovered. I'm guessing you haven't recovered either, Jack.
No.
I am absolutely speechless. As per usual, we are going to just take a little bit of time to break this episode down, give our thoughts, our feelings, any particular things that popped up of interest for us. How do we even kick this off? How do you even talk about this?
Oh,
It,
like that. Literally, I literally struggled for words when I'd watched
yeah.
everything. I didn't know what to say. So, like we just put thank you. That was
Yeah.
yeah. There's nothing
That's
else I could
all our
say.
social media has been is just thanks. Thank you, Tony Gilroy. Thank you to the incredible team. Actually, let's just take a moment to genuinely say thank you to every single person from runners to costume makers to camera
Yeah,
workers to editors to Tony himself to his son who put the line in about hope and rebellions, like
yeah,
every single person who contributed to this, big, small, long term, short term, thank you for making quite possibly the best Star Wars television, at least I've ever seen.
yeah, yeah. 100% agree. And again, just echoing what Charlie said there. Thank you to everybody, literally from the people providing the breakfast to the people acting it
Hmm.
all out, and everyone else in between that. Thank you so much for all your hard work. It is definitely paid off. And Charlie, you rightly said the other day, I have not seen the Star Wars community
No.
this excited or buzzing since Force Awakens. So it's been refreshing. It's been needed. And I'm so excited for this. Now, as always, we're going to start off with our overall reactions of the final 3 episodes. Was it good? Why it was good? And which episode out of the 3 was our favorite and why? I'll just start us off. Obviously, it was good. It was amazing. Um, it's just, I said this earlier. We know, I said this last night. We know what's happening. We know where it's going. We
Hmm.
sort of know who's going to survive, etc., etc. But because the writing's so good, because the acting's so good, because everything is literally on program, it's just captivating. The suspense is still there. We know Cassian's going to live, but still, we're like, oh my god, he's going to get through this. Wait, no, we know he's going to get through this. There's so many little points. It's crazy, isn't it? How it does that. Um, and then by far my favorite episode was the last one, which we'll go into um, after this. Charlie, what about you? Did you enjoy it? Why it was good, and which one was your favorite episode?
I was I was speechless and gobsmacked, and my jaw was on the floor from the start of episode 10 to the end of episode 12. It, like you said, this is something that I think all four of us have said is the level of tension the second like the camera fades in and the episode starts, the tension is palpable. Like I felt it in my chest. I was covered in like goosebumps. I was really, really on edge. And even though Cassian gets to
Yeah,
the end of this and he goes on to Rogue One and so on and so forth, and the story continues, you're still there going, "Oh goodness, what if he doesn't?" Oh,
yeah,
it's just an absolute masterpiece. I have far, far, far too many notes for this, but there are so
yeah.
many moments that are absolutely iconic. I think for me, episode 10 was my favorite.
Okay, nice.
I knew we'd be getting more of Luthen's backstory, which I was really, really excited for. I didn't
Yeah.
realize quite how closely that would tie into Clea and to her story. And I think spending so much time with her in episodes 10 and 11 was just really special and a really
Mm,
interesting change of pace. I saw somebody quick thank you to the Star Wars subreddit for some of the most fantastic and well informed discussions about these episodes that I've seen and had the pleasure of reading. So many of my points this evening are borrowed and taken from these incredible people who've contributed. So thank you so much for that. Somebody said that the Gorman massacre was the finale for Andor.
Mm,
These 3 episodes, this is the prologue for Rogue One. That's
nice.
why the tone is so different, but still
Yeah,
works. Like you're not seeing an end for the Andor series. We already saw that. We saw that in the last 3 episodes. This
yeah,
specifically, this is welcome to Rogue One.
yeah. Beautifully put. Yeah, absolutely love that. So we're going to start off breaking down each episode as we have been doing. Super excited to dive into it. We are going to start off with Charlie's favorite episode, Make It Stop, and it kicks off with Supervisor Lonnie basically turning around to Luthen and saying, "That's it. I'm done. I've had enough." He's got his family he needs to think of
Mm.
now. He is literally at the point of no return. We know that he's gone into Dedra's drive, if you like, and he's found the secret plans of the Death Star, but it's still not mentioned. The word Death Star is still not mentioned yet.
No.
Um, that is later in the show. But there's a couple of Easter eggs straight away that come out. You know, straight away there, Lonnie's confirming to Luthen that the Empire know that Saw Gerrera and his partisans are on Jeddah. So straight
Hmm.
away, you know these are coming. These Easter eggs are coming thick and fast. So stick with us on those. Um, and then yeah, they have a little chat, and then we're left with the interesting scene. Charlie, over to you. What have we got?
Mm. So something I found really, really fascinating about this, obviously, like Lonnie's been a huge part of this story. He is that whisper, he is that shadow in the darkness that
Mm,
holds the ultimate truth. And when you actually kind of look at it and break it down, Dedra's known about the Death Star. Oh, the Death Star, so exciting, for
yeah,
over a year now. But she
yeah,
is so fixated on Axis. She is so fixated on this tiny little segment of the wider picture. She is completely blindsided by it. Like it means nothing to her,
yeah,
despite the fact that it means everything to Luthen, which explains why he's so shocked that Lonnie's kept sat on this for such a long time. It's the layers of which this is interwoven with each other is absolutely fascinating to me. It really, really is.
yeah, yeah. And like you said, then straight away, everything's woven into each other. They start talking about this dimension of Jeddah and the kyber
Hmm.
crystals. You know, they've moved on now. Gorman's been and done. It's took them a year. They've got what they needed. They're now moving on to Jeddah, and they're starting to mine that place there. And again, it's starting to connect the events to Rogue One. Obviously, we see Luthen change. He has a sudden change of heart, if you like. I did actually think at first he was going to try and help Lonnie escape, but then
No.
as we saw, he left Lonnie with a little surprise to his demise, and we see the cheeky love cat.
We did. I think both Sydney and I were going, it's a lot, cat, it's a lot. Oh, oh. As soon
Yeah,
as I saw like the silhouette of him slumped on the bench, I was like, Luthen, what have you done? But this is what Luthen has always been, the tire up of loose ends, you know?
yes,
If you
yes,
know and you've passed that information on, unfortunately, it is time for you to die. He tried to do the same thing with Cassian in season one.
yep,
So this is, I think I saw a little bit of sort of shock online that that was Luthen's choice, and I was like, no, that
no,
is classic kind of end stage Luthen behavior. I feel,
yeah,
which really kind
yeah,
of kicks this episode being about kind of Luthen and Claire, which again I absolutely adored.
exactly, exactly. And also, where else do we see a ISB informant get killed right at the start of Rogue One? So again, all
Ye-
this ISB informants getting killed, like you rightly said there, Charlie. It's no different. We've seen it before. It's what's happening. Um, and then obviously we move on to Luthen pretty much handing over the information to Claire. Tells her, destroy everything, get rid of the evidence, etc., or he's going to do that. Um, and you're sort of thinking now that the noose is tightening. You sort of get that sense and that
Mhm.
feeling, don't we? Um, Go on, Charlie.
I feel like as you're talking us through this episode, I'm just remembering more and more bits of
I know,
information.
right?
The way they're communicating with each other on the stairs, that kind of top-down perspective, that bird's eye view that we have as the viewer was really, really interesting. That idea that we're
Yeah,
spying on a conversation, we're listening in, and the way they impart this information, I went straight in and watched Rogue One after these 3 episodes, and
nice.
it's really interesting to see how Tony Gilroy has picked these segments of keywords from Rogue One. Galen Erso EXO, Stardust, these really specific terms that we associate with Rogue One, and it's like a game of telephone.
Yeah,
And Claire absorbs all of this information and she runs away, and there's this back and forth about who's going to do the burn. And of course it's Luthen,
yeah,
because in season one he delivers that incredible line of "I burn my life for a sunrise that I will never see."
yes, yes. Very apt
And
words indeed.
does it absolutely kick off? He begins to kind of destroy everything and destroy the evidence and start to
Yeah,
burn it, and somebody rings the doorbell. I
they do.
thought it was going to be Perrin or one of the Chandrilla lot,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Dedra.
Yes, Dedra indeed rings the bell. Obviously, he notices it's Dedra. We don't see it. Again, the camera works phenomenal because it keeps you
Mm,
guessing all the way up until the point of actually seeing her on screen. Even the acting, you're still not quite sure who it is because we know that he's been putting up a facade all the way through the seasons. Yes, Dedra walks in, and they have a lot of interesting dialogue between them. Also, another interesting point is the blade that they get out. Um, it looks Napoleon, and it looks like Kit Fisto on that blade that he does show,
wow.
which is quite interesting. And there's also the Twi'lek Kalkori, which can be seen in Luthen's gallery as well. That's a relic that represents a family clan's history.
Mm.
That was first seen in Rebels. So again, lots of awesome stuff is coming
Dedra
into play.
plogs her suitcase kind of in front of Padme's headdress from The Phantom Menace, the first
Yes.
Queen Regal headdress that she wears with the big brown wig, which
Yeah.
felt particularly pointed from Dedra. I also, their conversation, this idea of there are two conversations happening at the same time with this kind of
Yeah.
double entendre that they've got going on, this double meaning and everything, flips me all the way back to season one when we're first introduced to Luthen. Almost everyone he speaks to, he has these double conversations with. It's
Yeah.
something he's extremely well versed in. But if you notice for the first time, we see Luthen shaking. We see him
Yes.
nervous. And something our little household found extremely funny, the fact that she clocks his wig, the fact that she's fully like, I know that you wear a wig.
Yeah.
I know that that's not real hair. That really cracked me up. That was really funny. Dedra's like chest puffed up. She's the cat that's got the cream. She's finally done it. She's done it.
Yeah.
And then what does he do, Jack?
Yes, he obviously breaks the good news. Obviously, he's already burnt all the evidence. I love the little bit of dialogue
Hmm.
in between. Like you said, there's two different conversations, and we see the point that he's been found out. He doesn't look well
Hmm.
anyway. He looks like he's already dying to me, which I think is part of the reason he maybe
Yeah.
stayed behind. I think he's done now. Um, but
It's the
yeah,
absolute power move of opening
mm,
that suitcase and pulling out the star path, the one thing that
yeah,
we'd probably almost completely forgotten about from the first couple of episodes. This
it's the same one.
hunk of nasty, dirty, damaged in this pristine gallery. It felt so wrong for her to even suggest it. There were layers to it. There were
Yeah,
so many layers,
yeah,
and he turns away and he takes the dagger and he commits seppuku. He commits
he
suicide
does.
or attempts to.
Yes, yes. Again, a little bit more Japanese origins into Star Wars as usual.
Hmm.
And then just when, like you said there, he does seppuku, and you think at last Dedra's finally got a bit of it's a word I'm looking for. She's finally got what she wants, or she's getting can't think of the words I'm looking for here, Charlie. What's the word I'm looking for?
Some
When
high
you
ground, dare I
yes,
say.
yes, a bit of high ground at last. And then he falls to the floor. We presume at this moment in time that he's potentially dead.
Hmm.
And then obviously all the units come in. She gets a medic. She gets him away, and it turns out that she's managed to save him, and that machine is keeping him alive. And then obviously Keela is obviously there watching all this
Claire.
unfold on the Keela. Claire is obviously outside watching all this unfold and sees him go off. And then obviously now it falls to her to get rid of him because she knows, he knows too much. He knows about Yavin. He told Lonnie that's where he'll keep him safe. So, you know, he
Mm.
knows a lot more information. He knows everything to do with the Rebel Alliance, which again, we as the viewers are hoping it doesn't get leaked. So everything's hanging on this episode already before we've even got, two episodes in. And then at that point, we start seeing a bit of backstory between um, Luthen
Mm.
and Claire. And we find out that obviously that Luther used to be a sergeant in the Imperial Army. Um,
Did.
Interesting fact as well about the hospital. The hospital is called the Lena So. So for those that are reading the High Republic stuff, that's obviously Chancellor Lena So. So a nice little shout out to the High Republic stuff. I love how they intertwine all this sort of stuff. I do.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then we go for the origins of them both. Do you want to crack on talking about the bombing scene?
It was particularly difficult. I assumed when the scene started, the flashback started, we were viewing this from the perspective of Claire kind of peeking through, but it still felt very kind of voyeuristic and very
Yeah,
vulnerable to see Luthen in such a state. Obviously, hearing him repeatedly say make it stop" was heartbreaking.
yeah,
I'm not terribly intimately familiar with the impact of PTSD on soldiers, but I'm aware that it's horrific to even say the least about it,
mm,
and
mm,
it's Andor has done an awful lot to show the casualties of war and the
yeah,
violence of war and the continuing knock-on effects that that has on people. And
yeah,
of course, it would take a child to kind of snap Luthen out of that. I like the idea that he abandons everything for her. He moves everything out of the way for her
yeah,
to save her. And there's
yeah,
something so beautiful about that. And what they forge is this interesting, it's kind of a friendship, I guess. It's
yeah,
somewhat of a
yeah,
parental relationship, but very, very
yeah,
quickly you see as the flashbacks progress that she is the one in charge, really. She is the one who makes the decisions.
yeah,
She is the one who is better at this than he is.
yeah,
And it fascinating.
yeah. And we see her again using a skill straight from the off. You know, where she's trying to barter, get some money.
Hmm.
She comes in. She sort of knows the place straight away. Starts calling him dad, etc. Saying that it was the mum that died. You know, pulling on the
Yeah.
heartstrings of the vendor. They get what they want. They move away. And I think they realise then, you know, we are an awesome team. Now I mentioned about the bombing thing. So just going back to that. So obviously that
Mm.
happened after that. Yeah, it looks like it's Naboo. It's not
It is
confirmed,
Naboo. It is
but it
Naboo. I am very, very, very set on the fact it is Naboo. The fact that they were also filming in Spain as well, which is where one of those locations is.
is. Okay.
Absolutely Naboo. I recognize those green domed roofs instantly.
Yeah.
Really beautiful, really idyllic, a very interesting place to attempt something like that, to do something like that. And the way he controls where she looks, what she's looking at, what she's paying attention to. This is
Mhm.
a reshaping for Claire. This is a restructuring of how she thinks and how she approaches this because Luthen is so absolute in his ideals. People want to
Yeah.
argue that Saw Gerrera is an extremist. I would also argue that Luthen falls under the label of being
Yeah.
an extremist. It may not present itself in the same way, but the way he
Mm.
thinks and the way he approaches these ideas is definitely in that camp.
Yeah.
And this
One
was a
hundred
really
percent.
good example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mon Mothma, Saw Gerrera are two sides of the same coin, and definitely put Luthen in
Hmm.
that category
Hmm.
as well. Obviously, when they're watching the bridge and the Imperial troops on there, he obviously says to her, "Do it." Obviously, the line from Chancellor Palpatine and Revenge of the Sith again, a nice cheeky little nod, and he sort of coaches her. You know, don't look at it straight away. Look at me. And all while this is happening, obviously the bridge gets blown up. They walk away, but Claire, back in the present, is actually sneaking her way to Luthen at the hospital, and that's when we get the whole backstory of this, and we start seeing it all through her eyes, etc.
Hmm.
Um, and then yeah, that's pretty much where episode 10 kind of ends, isn't it? You know, we now know that she's infiltrated the hospital. We know the backstory now behind it. And then we're
Hmm.
straight into again, probably the biggest one of the three, in my opinion, episode 11, titled "Who Else Knows."
I actually found the hospital stuff quite interesting. Obviously, we've seen examples of Star Wars med care related stuff like back to tanks and all of this sort of stuff, and dressings and med droids
Mm,
and nurse droids. This is the first time I've seen what I would consider like a kind of the UK equivalent of like an NHS hospital, where there was an A&E and a waiting room, and there were triage nurses, and there were sign-in tablets, and there were all of these
yeah,
things that we recognize from a normal hospital twisted into Star Wars. And I thought that was
yeah,
really, really fascinating. I could have spent hours in there.
yeah,
Even when later on in the episode, the hospital director's like, "You can't do this. This is ridiculous. These are my patients."
yeah,
It's
yeah,
really, really fascinating. And yeah, episode 11 just kicks straight into gear. And
yeah. So straight into episode 11. Obviously, Claire's gone in there. She's killed. Luthen. She's got rid of that mission complete. Sheds a tear, and it opens up in episode 11 with Supervisor Hurt, basically investigating the mess that Dedra has left behind again at the hospital, because in the previous episode, Supervisor Hurt actually arrested Dedra for her mishandling of the raid on Luthen's gallery. But that is not actually the real reason why she was taken into custody, because it comes apparent later on when she is interviewed by somebody. Now, just going back to the who else knows stuff, again, Tony Gilroy's genius, or my theory thing is, obviously it's the title we know, episode 11, but it's also the key question that Cassian asks Tivik in Rogue One, just before he gives him the blast as well, who else knows. So yeah, interesting, nice little tidbit for you. And then yeah, so we know that Dedra's been arrested, and then we see the main man himself, Orson Krennic. He shuts off the security feed and goes straight into the white interrogation room that Dedra is waiting in, and literally goes to town on her. He is not happy.
So here's the thing. We are speeding through. I'm going to need us to rewind for one hot second back to Luthen's death, because I feel like we have to talk about this for a second. I'm sorry, Dedra. We will get to you. Sit there and stew for another minute longer. Do you think this is the death that Luthen deserved? Because I wrote this down as a point. Let me consult my notes. Thank you very much. Um, this is so annoying. Where is it? That was it. Something I thought that was really, really beautiful. Obviously, it's Claire sneaking in to end his life and stop it so that he doesn't pass any information on to the Empire, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., etc. I also think that when she disconnected the machine, he almost seemed to smile, and I found that
Yes.
unbelievably moving. It was a smile of success and a smile of he won, he did it,
Yeah.
and Claire saved him from torture and humiliation, and she gave him dignity and what I would consider a very honourable death, given the circumstances, given how everyone else in this series ends up.
Yeah.
This was the kindest and the most dignified way for Luthen to leave us and for his story to end, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a fair shout. Very, very peaceful. I don't think there's any other ways he could have died, if I'm honest, because again, he's quite old at this
No.
point. A peaceful death. But yeah, totally agree with you on that. Any more on that bit, Charlie?
My apologies, everybody. I will wind us back forward again to Dedra. Don't you find it interesting that she has ended up in exactly the same place that Cyril ended up? And
Great point.
if it wasn't for Dedra being arrested, Claire wouldn't have been able to invade the hospital as easily as she did. The fact that
Yeah.
they're all walking around going, it was a three-man team. It was a three-man team that did it. No, that was a
Yeah.
one-woman team. Thank you
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
much. A
Yeah.
one-woman maniac team.
Yeah, indeed. And it's in this episode and with Dedra where Krennic basically tells her to say the word, speak the name, and we hear it, Death Star, and doesn't it ring? Doesn't it go off?
It's deeply unsettling given the circumstances. Ben Mendelsohn, if anybody watched the live stream that was done yesterday, I believe it was, with Diego Luna and Tony Gilroy and a bunch of other guests, when they spoke to the actress who plays Dedra, she says that Ben Mendelsohn is very unpredictable to work with. He very much just
Yeah.
does what he's going to do, and nobody knows what that's going to be. And I was
Yeah.
particularly fascinated by his choice to be in her ear,
Mm.
whatever the face grab and whatever this finger on the top of her head.
Yeah, right.
We've been doing that to each other all evening. It's very uncomfortable. It's not very nice. It's quite painful.
Yeah. No,
Really
no.
bizarre.
It is,
And
but it works.
she's collapsing. She is
Yeah.
completely collapsing. Everything she has fought her entire life for is falling to pieces, and good God, is it satisfying to watch.
See, I was the
Oof.
complete opposite end of the spectrum on that. I felt really bad for Dedra, but it is Denise Goff at the end of the day.
You
So yeah,
sympathizer.
I know, right? So yeah, they had their little chat. Krennic clearly not happy. And then we leave Dedra there, and we're unsure at the minute what fate Dedra is gonna behold. We then have Supervisor Hurt. He meets with Partagaz and Krennic to share their findings from the hospital. They all go in a little conference room. And they realised then it was a one-woman team, and they start scheming
Hmm.
how they intend to capture her. And I found it quite ironic again that Major Partagas, he reminds Krennic that he's not the one that has to make the excuses to regarding the Death Star's delays. This is all the pressure. It's all coming from Palpatine
Yeah.
and Moff Tarkin again mentioned. They want that operational battle station and they want it now.
The Empire is finally becoming the snake that's eating its own tail. You can see it. It's slowly chomping its way up there, just bit by bit by bit.
Mm,
Everyone's heels are
mm,
getting bitten at. Everyone's getting the whip cracked. Everyone is under the same amount of intense pressure. I really like this kind of fight for power. Like Dedra's always been obviously being this is something I think I spoke about it in season one when I discussed it on a previous podcast, is this idea that obviously she's had to fight for where she is. Obviously she's had to be kind of the woman in a male dominated workplace. And she sits there and tries to spin that to Krennic, and he just shuts her down
yeah,
immediately. He has got no time, no space for it. He's like, I am above you, I am
yeah,
better than you, I am bigger than you, and I am right. Enough. And it's just the Schadenfreude is particularly delicious.
yeah, yeah, indeed. And then we get to Claire. She's obviously back in the apartment that we first saw Bix and Cassian residing in.
She is.
So that is obviously the Say house. Again, point to note, it's been a few years. It's extremely run down. Um, Lots going on. And then a bit of Morse code back and forth. And we go back
Yeah, pulse
to
codes. I thought that was
that's the
really
one.
interesting. That's not something we've seen in a
No,
while in Star Wars, like old
exactly.
school communication.
Yeah, yeah. And Cassian and Will basically playing what can only be described as like a dice game or cards or something. I thought it was back to begin
I
with,
think
but
they're
it's
playing
clearly not.
dominoes. I think like a weird
Dominoes.
mix of dominoes and kind of poker with lots of betting involved.
Interesting. So yeah, that all comes through. They realise it's an SOS, and then they need to make contact.
Oh, actually, how nice was it? This is another thing Tony Gilroy mentioned in that live stream yesterday, that obviously it's been a year since Bix moved out, sad times,
Yeah,
and Bix has moved out, but the boys have moved in.
yeah,
So it's now turned into a bit of a frat house where they gamble and they drink and they share stories and they take the mickey out
yeah.
of each other and they're all slobby boy roommates. And it's
I love it.
nice that Cassian has something fun and something a bit silly and a bit
Yeah,
in the
bit
midst
of
of all of
downtime.
this. Special shout out to Alan Tudyk. K2 is absolutely phenomenal in this episode. I
Yeah,
have been particularly delighted by the Mel. She's never been to Coruscant. I've been to Coruscant. I was
yeah,
in a parade. The Emperor was there. And
yeah.
I saw it described in an interview that he's just a little baby with an awful lot to say and no real impulse control. And I really enjoy that energy. I think he might be my new favorite droid.
I've seen that across the internet. There's a lot of love for K2. Yeah. So after that, then obviously they get the message. Cassian instructs Will, get scheduled for a test run. We'll make it look like we're doing one of those. And K2 again tries and fails to get them to do things by the book. They start getting ready to go, and Dreven, played by Alistair Petra, basically finds out what they're doing, and basically, since he has scheduled himself for an evaluation flight, he'll head down. He does try to stop him. He knows he's not going to stop him anyway. And yeah, like you said, off they go, and that's when K2 starts talking about the this time on Coruscant, which we believe could be linked to like a large parade when the Galactic Empire first
Hmm.
took over. Now, Cassian does make contact with Claire in the safe house. They get the transmission, and that's how they find out where she's hiding. But also Hurt does, and he basically puts together an infiltration team, and then they all converge onto the apartment. Um, and again, at this stage now, it's looking pretty bleak because there's not really a way out. It
This
goes back to again
was
the writing where it's like
this
super
was
tense.
really
Yeah,
exactly. This was so unbelievably tense and really, really difficult to sit through. And it's,
yeah,
well, can everybody get their bums in gear, please? Can we get a move on, please? Can we work K2? Can we hurry up now,
yeah,
please?
yeah, exactly. So off Cashin goes with Melshi, K2. They land, they get through the complex. He knows exactly where to go. They take their
Hmm.
sweet time getting there. We can see how run down the apartments have become since the last time they were there. At the same time, the infiltrations go in, the communications get jammed pretty much as they land. They sort of know, but just crack on, which I found was a bit strange. But K2 knew straight away that something wasn't right, and then took it upon himself to head down. And it sort of finishes with the infiltration team locking in on the apartment and moving down the corridor, and then the episode pretty much ends there. Any
I think
final words?
I did shout at the telly. I was a bit like, "Excuse me, what the heck?
Yeah,
Hello?"
yeah. And then we're into the big one, episode 12.
Wait, 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 wait. This is also not only was episode 10 the first time we've seen Luther nervous, episode 11 is the first time we have seen Claire any kind of frantic. She is
Yeah,
usually the most calm, composed, put together, easy to communicate, and now she is a gabbling, terrified mess because she holds one of the biggest pieces of information that barely anybody in the rebellion knows. And even Cassian is a little bit like, I don't know about this. I don't know
yeah,
if I believe you or not. And it's just, we're sat here as the viewers chewing our fingers to the bone because we know it's true. We know what's
yeah,
going on. Can everyone else catch up, please?
yes.
And
So
I think
yeah,
knowing all of this, and as it ramps up and ramps up and ramps up, you hit episode 12 just absolutely kind of
that's right.
flattened
That's
with
right.
it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because then it starts to bring in Luthen's legacy. Again, Charlie sort of touched on it earlier. There's a bit of distrust between Luthen and the Rebel Alliance. We sort of get
Hmm.
this perspective that Luthen wasn't trusted by the Rebel Alliance, despite having, made the foundations for the Rebel Alliance. Um, and then episode 12, Jeddah, Kyber, Urso. So glad I said that right this time. And then we see
Well
the
done.
Imperials straight in. Um, Pinning down essentially Cassian, Claire, and Melshi. They hit him with a stun grenade. I think Melshi takes the brunt of it. Not Melshi, sorry, Claire takes the brunt of it.
She
And
does, bless her.
K2 gets his own hallway scene, similar to Rogue One hallway scene with Vader. Obviously, en route to that, he does clear out a few Imperials. Go on, Charlie.
So this was utterly horrific. He used Officer Hurt as a human shield.
Yeah.
Now I was expecting like maybe a couple of seconds of the the flash of the muzzle and it illuminates the hallway scene. I was expecting one or two frames of that, not
Yeah.
multiple. I think there are about 8 shots taken at
Yeah.
Hertz, and every
It's
single time the
brutal.
camera flashed, you just saw it was a corpse, a literal
Whole.
corpse, Tony Gilroy being held.
Yeah.
Um, is this is a long way from cute little Ewoks. I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely here for it though. This is not me
100%.
complaining. This is me gobsmacked at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like to think that was the closest they could get to having this kind of K2SO horror episode that they all wanted so much. So
Yeah.
go ahead, because I was terrified.
Great point. Great point. So eventually K2 does rescue them. And then we see Cassian coming out carrying a wounded Claire. And essentially they do all return to Yavin. And this bit sort of did surprise me. Now, obviously, there's a lot of hustle and bustle happening on the Alliance base. We do see Power as well from Rogue One.
We
Um,
do.
yes. And, they land and it's quite a hostile reception. Now, they've not got the correct codes. They're coming in hot. They decide not to blow them up, but K2 just say, we're probably going to get blown up. But for whatever reason,
I'm going to
they
say you
don't.
kidnapped me.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant line. Essentially, they all come out again. You've got you got oh god, what's Draven's there, like leading the group, if you like. They all get off. Long story short, they do take Claire away for medical treatment, but Cassian is literally pulled in, and by pulled in, he's chucked in front of the hierarchy. He's getting questioned now from Senator Bail Organa, Admiral Radis is there, which I found amazing. Mon Mothma's there, and there's some more rebel leaders, and they're all questioning Cassian. And then they start questioning the reliability and the information on Luthen. And
Hmm.
again, like you said, Charlie, I at this point was screaming, going, "It's all true. Why do you not
Yeah.
believe?"
I understand the hesitation and I understand the anxiety and the stress, but who is the lady in the hood? She was as obstinate in this
Mm,
as she was in
ugh,
Rogue One. I don't know who she is.
ugh,
I don't want to know who she is. I need her to
yeah,
leave.
yeah,
But
yeah,
what I
yeah,
did really enjoy about this portion of spending some time on Yavin, it was really nice to see characters interact that either we've not seen interact or haven't
yeah,
interacted in a while. Vel rescuing Claire from the rain when she was confused and not feeling well, and
mm,
Mon Mothma having a silent support for Cassian when she's listening to him speak about what's really going on and the Death Star and Galen Erso and all of this. You can see on her face that she believes him, but she knows
yeah,
speaking up and saying that's not the time for this right now. Um, yeah. And Melshi and Andor play. There are so many just little moments where everyone gets to
yeah.
be together, and despite how horrific these episodes are and have been, it's so nice to have these moments of happiness because we need it because we know what's coming.
Yes, yes, we do. Now, before the all the questioning, obviously, we have a little scene where Mon Mothma's with Bale, and you've got the hologram of Saw Gerrera. Again, they're all having a
Mm,
little bit of a discussion, similar to one of the reels that I dropped on Instagram. That's really taken off. Lots of awesome debate there. Um, but yeah, he basically refuses help on Jeddah. They know he's on Jeddah. They've told him that. He knows that they've got spies there
hmm
with him. But he refuses help for whatever reason. Saw Gerrera is set in his ways, but hey ho,
He
off we
is.
go. Really interesting point. So the two senators that were on that table when they're all questioning is Senators Jabal and Pamela. Couldn't tell you who's who, but they did first debut in 2016's Rogue One. But what I can tell you, now this is an amazing thing, right? As soon as I saw Mon Mothma, I was like, "Course, she is not aged well, or she is not looking well." These people now in this scene look pretty much identical. Well, they look identical. They've got the same costumes and the hair they
Yeah.
had in Rogue One, and that again just shows how intimate or how close. Struggling my word today. How close the events of Rogue One actually are. So they're all dressed the same. The hair's the same.
hmm
They're pretty much good to go. Now, Mon Mothma, sorry, in fact, I'll just rewind a little bit. Cassian then, when they're all questioning the integrity, the integrity of Luthen's information, really does go to town on them and tells them, if it wasn't for Luthen, this rebellion wouldn't even be a thing. And I love that. I
It
absolutely love that.
it's the first time we've seen Cassian lose his temper like that
Yeah,
publicly versus privately. That's a kind of outburst we've only seen with Luthen or with Bick specifically. This is never something that he's let out, and we are finally seeing Cassian Andor the rebel. We are finally seeing that rebel leader, that captain. He is becoming everything he was meant to be, and the prophecy of the Force healer was correct. He is a messenger. He is a messenger for the information from Clear.
yeah,
He is a messenger for the information to Jin. And on it goes and on it goes. And to see the Force healer again and for them to have that little moment where they nod at each other as well, that was really
yeah,
special. That just kind of acknowledgement of the Force moves in all of us. We also had a May the Force be with you, which I wasn't expecting, but was so,
yeah,
so appreciated and so, so beautiful.
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, after this point, Mon Mothma basically tells Bail Organa, we need to listen to him. She gives him permission to go to the
hmm
medical bay to see Claire. Um, they have a little discussion. Not really a great deal goes on between them two. I think they sort of just confirm with each other, that they believe the information. But the
hmm
biggest point is between Val and Mon Mothma. She basically tells her to spy on Cassian and go and find out if he's actually telling the truth.
She does.
So off she goes. What better way to find out the truth is have a few drinks, and they toast to all the people that have fallen for the cause in both seasons, for Luther, Gorn, Nemec, Sintra, the Gormans, Ferrix, Marva, everyone, even the Darnis. And then yeah, Val does literally go back and say, he is telling the truth. And on the way
hmm
back, obviously she picks up Claire. I don't know where Claire was going, if I'm honest. She looked like she was just getting up to walk. Where
Yeah.
I don't um, but yeah, so after that, then we shoot back to Cassian because Strevon comes and he tells him, they've had a informant on Catherine that'll only speak to um, Cassian essentially, and this then starts gearing up the events for Rogue One. Tivik stays, got the information. Cassian knows, right, I've got to go. And then we see Cassian making his way towards his ship, dressed in the same costume, the same
Yep.
hairstyle, the same blaster, the same holster. Everything is literally shown on screen individually to show we are going into uh, Rogue One. So again, they have a nice little chat. They discuss the ramification, make sure they trust each other at least, And then Mon Mothma's there approaching Bail Organa, saying, you need to hear us out. And
Hmm.
yeah, we see Bail tell Cassian, go to Catherine's completely on board with it, and he says, whatever happens, he'll go down swinging. And then we start to get the music kicking off, and it heads back to a couple of more really powerful scenes. Or you got any points on anything I mentioned there, Charlie? I went on a bit of a tangent there, didn't I?
No, that's all right. I enjoyed listening to you. You summed all of that up wonderfully. It's just, I think the closer it's gotten at the end of episode 12, the closer it gets to the end, the closer we're getting to Rogue One. And obviously we're talking
Yeah,
like days. Like obviously Rogue One starts with the information gathered on Kafrine, and
yeah,
when you watch it so close to each other, you really see how much time Tony Gilroy has put in to into all of it, from the smallest details to the biggest details to the thinnest little plot threads. It has been confirmed by Tony Gilroy that Claire is not Andor's sister. So, as much as that was a very bold theory from me, I need to get my hat
yeah,
and my mustard because that was not true. Tony Gilroy said he specifically wanted to leave it unanswered because it lends so much
yeah.
more weight to Andor's story. That yes, there are some happy endings, but not all happy endings. However, speaking of happy endings, we finished the episode on this kind of catch up montage,
hmm
and
hmm
everyone got a surprising amount of happy endings. Vel, Wilman, and Claire all live to fight another day and potentially even survive the Empire, or at least they'll get to see the Death Star destroyed. One of the biggest reveals, which made me absolutely, I'd managed to hold it together through all of the episodes, and then we see Bix in the fields with a
We
little
do.
tiny baby
We
with
call. I'm
dark
sure.
hair.
I'm sure I called that last night that she was pregnant, and that's why she left. I'm positive that's
See,
why I called that.
now that makes sense because it's one thing for Bix to have stayed and Cassian would have
Yeah,
struggled to
she know.
leave and go and do what he needed to do. But if there was a child,
She know. She know.
she knew.
She absolutely know. And then that obviously opens the door for more spin-offs, similar to Cassian's sister. We could do spin-offs with the sister if she's leading her own
Oh,
rebellion the other side of the galaxy. We've still got quite a few more scenes. Go on, Charlie.
that is a very good point. B2 is not abandoned. Anybody who was
No,
worried or anxious, our dear little B2 emo is absolutely fine and
she's
dandy.
busy racing.
However, this is where it starts to get pretty intense.
Mm,
This entire montage is overlaid with Nemik's manifesto, and I think
yes.
the fact that one of Cassian's last acts before leaving for the events of Rogue One was to publish Nemik's manifesto. I'm going to cry.
Yes.
To
Powerful
publish his
words.
manifesto across the galaxy, and finally, the most held together, most appropriate, most meticulous Empire officer Partagaz is listening to it, and he says, "It's everywhere."
And don't you think at that point as well that it started to affect him? It
He's
looked to
turned.
me
He's the first to go.
I think he
Crazy.
realised. So I think he realised. Obviously, his number two, his second in command, came to take him away. He asked him to
Hmm.
give him a few moments to think of his thoughts. Stood outside the door. I knew exactly what he was going
I
to do
knew
at
as
that
well. I
point.
knew exactly what he was going to do.
Um, you hear the blaster, and I love the little touch of the hands. Just like it's
Just,
fine, leave it. Don't need to
just let it
rush in. So
happen.
he knew. Brilliant, brilliant touch. So yeah, we knew that he'd obviously seen himself off. We then switched to Dedra, which is again on some form of prison. Unsure if it's Narkina 5, but it's very similar to be a Narkina type prison, wearing the same
Also,
white and orange uniform.
how interesting was it that Partagaz, his death mirrored Luthen's in the fact that they
Yeah.
both took their own lives for the sake of not facing the wrath of the Empire, but for two very different reasons. And Luthen
Yeah.
ended up with this dignified and beautiful death, whereas Partagaz was deeply shameful, like really, really, really
Yeah.
shameful. Couldn't even face up to his boss. Oh dear. Oh, what a
Yes.
terrible shame. And then this particular scene had me screaming at the television. I'm surprised I didn't put my fist through it. Perrin, you slimy,
I
slimy,
know, right?
horrible, horrible man, doomed to be a drunk for the rest of your days and sleeping with his in-law.
Yeah, yeah. So that's him. You could tell that affected him as well. Like you said, the Doom's
Yeah,
he's pretty much doomed. Like we mentioned as well with Dedra, she's left
yeah,
in the prison, breaking down.
perfect.
Yeah, gutted,
Exactly what she deserved. Death would have been
gutted.
far too kind for her. She needs to suffer. She
Yeah.
needs to suffer.
Um, then we saw, then we see Saw on Jeddah looking through the window on Jeddah at his base of operations with the Star Destroyer over the city as well. We see Krennic overseeing the Death Star as well. Again, another parallel shot to the one seen in Rogue One. And then yeah, we sort of did it backwards, but yeah, it finishes on Bix and the child back on Mina Rue on the farming planet, if you like. Obviously, we see B2 racing
Yeah.
around with his new droid friend. And then yeah, the music really kicks off, and that is it.
I sat and stayed till the end of the credits just in case there was a little end credit scene. There isn't, but what does happen is as the Andor music ends, it kicks into the start of the John Williams Star Wars theme, which is
Yes,
absolutely beautiful. Such an incredibly special touch just for the people who like to stick around for the end.
yes,
And
great point.
I just cried. I just cried
Yeah,
my way through these 3 episodes. They were
and
it it was so beautiful and so moving. I don't have words for it. I really don't.
emotional damage. I think emotional damage
Yeah,
for sure.
emotional damage.
Mm, mm.
Definitely.
So again, that is pretty much the recap for 10, 11, 12. It's our
Mm.
final finale recap. It's been an
It
absolute pleasure,
is.
Charlie. It's been an absolute pleasure doing this with you.
It's been an absolute pleasure doing this with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. It's been wonderful.
Good. This Sunday, we are going to be covering the whole season as a whole. Any standout
We are.
moments, any characters that stood out for you, standout moments, things that you liked, things that you didn't like. Because there's a few people that have
We
reached out to me and told me there's a few things they didn't particularly like about Andor, which I found surprising.
Mhm.
So, any form of opinion, whether you like it, you don't like it, let us know. Let us know on our Facebook group as well. It's a safe place. It's fine. You don't have to like everything. There's enough Star Wars for everybody.
There is.
Any points from you, Charlie?
I'm excited for this Sunday because not only are we recapping the whole season, we will also be talking about how this changes Rogue One and
Yeah.
how this changes A New Hope, because I think a lot of people have been doing kind of the whole lot. And obviously, if you watch A New Hope, you've got to watch the rest of them as well. So
Mm,
we're
mm,
what we're really promoting is another Star Wars marathon, let's be honest.
yeah. Yeah.
Our social media has been blowing up over
Big
the
time.
last couple of weeks. And I just want to take a moment to say a humongous thank you to everyone who has contributed, commented, shared, liked, viewed, watched over and over again, sent it to your friends because you loved it or you hated it. Thank you. And it means that when we talk about things like this, we have a huge amount of community response. You can find us on all social medias. Explore the Force, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, we're probably there. Come and join us because our community is what makes us able to do this and makes it so great.
Exactly that. Thank you very much, Charlie. And again, thank you very much to all the community. Make sure, please, you get your comments in if you want your voice to be heard. We know that ILM are watching. They've already commented on one of our posts. So again, get your posts out there.
Hi,
You never know
ILM.
who's
Love
watching.
you.
You never know who's watching or reading the comments. So yeah, for the final time, thank you very much for joining us on the finale recap. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please, please, please like, share, subscribe, and we look forward to listening, watching, reading, however you send your comments to us over on our page. Take care. Thank you very much, and may the force be with you.
Only now, at the end, do you understand? Close your eyes.